Hello everyone, this is Alexandra Meadors of galacticconnection.com, and today is Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. And as usual, I just wanted to invite everyone to check out our daily blog page, which is at galacticconnection.com/daily-blog. And we run this blog literally 365 days a year. Everything from ufology to spirituality to conspiracy to quantum physics and more. You can scope it out. There's over 20,000 posts up there. I mean, there's just a ton of information up there. So with that said, I have literally one of my most favorite guests. I very rarely have run into her, and I finally was able to hook up with her, and her name is Barbara Lamb. I'm sure her reputation precedes her. As many know, she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also a hypnotherapist and a regression therapist out of California, in my backyard. She received her liberal arts bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts, and she also carries a master's degree in behavioral sciences at the University of Laverne in California. She specializes in regression therapy, especially for people who have had experiences with extraterrestrial beings. And this is one of the main pieces of information that we're going to discuss today. She is trained in regression therapy for several years. I mean, her resume is unbelievable. And feel free, as you're listening to this interview, to visit her website at barbaralambt.com. That's marriagefamilytherapist.com. So it's barbaralambt.com. And anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a lot of really cool things that are near and dear to our hearts, especially when it comes to, oh my gosh, UFOs and ETs and abductions and crop circles and all those good things. Barbara has been visiting and researching crop circles. In particular, I will have to ask her. I know she's been in England and all over the United States. She's done a lot of conferences on that. That's actually how I first met her. And she's just a wealth of knowledge as far as what the background and the true purpose of these crop circles are. If you're anything like me, they fascinate me, and I would love to know more about it. So with that said, we'll go ahead and pull Barbara on. I could just keep going on and on, Barbara, about your background, but I think it would take too long.
Well, hi.
Hello.
I'm very happy to be with you and all of your listeners, and this material is so wonderful to share.
It is. It is. And the time has come, has it not?
Yes. I think there's more and more interest, even with people who are newly paying attention to things like UFOs and contacts with the beings, the occupants of UFOs, and also the phenomenon of crop circles, which are happening really all over the world, and especially concentrated in England.
Yes. Now, why is that the case? Why are they so concentrated in England?
Well, we can only have theories about that, but I think that there's some pretty good theories. One of them is that it seems like, from a scientific point of view, it seems like the laying down of a crop circle involves some moisture. And England has a lot of moisture, has a lot of rain, a very high water table because of the large amount of rain. And so it has geological aquifers and underground streams and rivers, and that just runs throughout the country, and particularly in the southwestern part of England, Wiltshire County, Hampshire County, Somerset, Sussex, Oxfordshire, those areas in particular.
Wow.
And so, according to scientists, that is a wonderful biophysicist named W.C. Levengood in Michigan, he tested many plants from crop circles and he tested them in a very scientific way, and he determined that crop circles are made still by an unknown source, according to him, but that they were made by a plasma vortex swirling around to the ground from the upper atmosphere, and that plasma had a number of different plasma ingredients in it. And then when this, like a whirlwind shape, sort of a cone-shaped swirling of plasma would reach the ground, it would draw up the water from under the surface of the soil. And because this plasma vortex or whirlwind was very hot, he determined at least 800 degrees Fahrenheit. So normally, if something like that would hit the ground, it would scorch the ground, and it would certainly burn up the plants. But in this case, with the making of a crop circle, that doesn't happen at all. Nothing is damaged. And so the vortex hits the ground, draws up the water from under the soil, and that creates a steam effect. And that means that the plants that are laid down as a crop circle can just bend over very, very gently. They don't break. They're not burned or anything. And then they can be swirled and shaped into whatever the pattern has been intended to be. So that is one of the prominent theories. There are other scientists who have a different theory to some extent, which is that there are templates of these patterns, these designs that we see as crop circles, and that those templates or patterns happen to be in the ground itself. And there's sort of an energy coming up from under the surface of the soil, and the moisture and heat and so forth as well, and that is how crop circles are formed.
Wow.
But frankly, I mean, I just have to say that these are really good theories. They've been studied at length and by very intelligent people, and yet it's still a mystery. We don't really know how they are made. Now, there are some other clues about the making of a crop circle, which I think are interesting. One of them is that a beam of light coming from the sky has been known, it certainly seems, to make at least some of the crop circles. The beam of light has been witnessed during the dark of night coming right down into a particular area of a field, and then the next morning in the daylight, people have gone out to check that, having seen that beam, and they notice, oh, there's a new crop circle here. So it certainly seems like at least some of the crop circles are made from some sort of beam of light. It's usually a pretty thick beam of light, very white, very intense, as they've been witnessed, and they don't really see where that beam is coming from, except for one exception that I know about, and that was in the very early 1990s, I think probably 1991, and there was a young man in England, near Glastonbury, England, and late one afternoon, it was almost dark, he was riding along on his bicycle, and he noticed a beam of light coming down into a wheat field that he was riding by. And he also noticed that the crop out there where the beam was hitting the ground seemed to be kind of blowing around, swirling around, and then lowering down toward the ground. And he went back the next morning and took a nice walk out into that field and realized, oh my goodness, there's this really interesting circle of laid down crop, and it's forming a very nice pattern. It's not even just a simple circle. So but I must backtrack a moment and say that while he was watching this beam of light coming down from above, he followed with his eyes, he followed that beam up into the sky, and he could faintly see that this beam was coming from what looked like a metallic disc-shaped craft.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's one. And we also have another kind of witnessing, too. In fact, there's a videotape of this particular event, and that was in 1996. And a young man was sleeping overnight, just camping out, no tent, just his sleeping bag on the ground. And he was on a very high hill, which, for people who know that area, it's called Oliver's Castle. It's not really a castle, it's a hill. And that hill overlooked a large, flat wheat field, very nice crop. And so he was sleeping there at night with his video camcorder right next to him. And when dawn was just happening, he sensed something, and he propped himself up on his elbows and looked down at that flat field below, just in time to see two balls of light, like spheres, probably the size of a basketball, but maybe larger. It was hard to determine exactly from the distance. And he grabbed his video camcorder and started filming. And wonderful that he did. I mean, this is an incredible thing, because he certainly seems to have been catching the actual making of a crop circle by these two balls of light.
Fantastic.
They were very white. They were luminous, but they weren't sending out a glow. The glow was contained within the shape of each sphere. So he saw these two balls of light sweeping from behind a hedge over the middle of the field, where there was already a ball of light. That one wasn't as bright and illuminated, but it was swirling around like a slow circling around in the middle and laying down a perfect circle of crop, while these other two came kind of flying fairly fast, just sort of swooping over the field, fairly low, it seemed, to the ground. And as it did that, there were spokes of the design being laid down in the crop, coming out from that circle.
Wow.
And so these two balls of light seemed to be laying that down, that pattern. And then they continued on over to the other side of the field and back of that hedge again. And then immediately, another two balls, or maybe the same ones, we don't know, came back from that side of the field, swooped low over the pattern again, and as it did that, the spokes became larger with a circle at the end, and then those two balls of light went behind the hedge again. So what was left in the field was a perfect snowflake, simple snowflake sort of pattern.
Beautiful.
With the center circle and these 6 spokes with little circles halfway and a circle at the end of each spoke coming out. And it was perfect. I mean, in terms of the distance of each spoke from each other and the length of each spoke, the size of the circles on each spoke, a very lovely, simple, and yet complex pattern.
Wow.
Which had been witnessed. So, as with so many of these things that are anomalous, shall we say, it stirred up a great controversy. I happened to be there, luckily, on that particular date when this video footage was brought to the place that was the crop circle hangout place, where all of us crop circle enthusiasts would gather, a place called the Barge Inn. in a little town called Honey Street,
Huh.
next to another little town called Alton Barnes. Any of your listeners who have followed this phenomenon at all might very well recognize those names. Anyway, at noontime that day that he took the footage, he brought the videotape. We weren't using DVDs yet, I think, in 1996 when this was happening. He brought the videotape into the barge inn to give to the crop circle researchers. And we researchers were all out in the fields visiting other crop circles. So it wasn't actually received by those researchers until early evening. Fortunately, I was one of the people who happened to be there at the barge inn when somebody, one of the researchers, put that video up on the television, and so we got to see this, and this was so exciting. And some of us thought, okay, this is proof of how crop circles are made. And we were really literally jumping up and down, thinking, whoa, finally somebody has caught the authentic making of a crop circle. But just like with all anomalous subjects, there are the inevitable skeptics.
Yes.
And
and that's what I was going to ask you. I'm so interested in what you have to say for all of those out there that say these crop circles are popping up and they're hoaxes and they've been made by, other people and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Well, and that's a controversy that will probably go on forever. I mean, as long as anybody's interested in crop circles, you've got the quote-unquote dedicated believers in the genuine phenomenon. I'm one of those genuine believers in the genuine phenomenon, and that simply means that we understand that these crop circles are not made by humans, or shall I say more accurately, that most, in my opinion, most of the crop circles are not made by people. They are not hoaxed. They are made by this unknown source that certainly seems to be coming from off-planet, and by something or someone very, very creative and intelligent and knowledgeable. And I do need to say, too, that there are some, we know for sure, there are some crop circles that are made by men. And there is a difference. And one of the intriguing things to me about visiting crop circles every summer, I've visited them for 24 summers in a row. Now, my 25th summer is coming up in a few months.
Yay!
But so I've been in, at least 1,200, probably by now 1,300 crop circles, and really spent time in each one, studying it and feeling the energies, and sometimes just having exquisite experiences, even some anomalous experiences. But back to the question of man-made, yes, there are some, well, they're referred to as hoaxers, men who go out in the field sometimes at night and make a crop circle. And I've been fortunately able to talk to some of them at length.
Good.
And not just in 1 year, but, here and there over the years. And so, and some of them admit, I say, look, I won't give your name, I won't publish it, but so you can remain anonymous if you wish. The human crop circle makers need to remain anonymous to some extent because they are actually trespassing on farmers' fields, on private property. And so they don't want to be prosecuted,
right,
and fined or taken to jail or whatever. So they really keep a low profile. But in talking with them, they have said some really amazing things. For instance, there's that thing that happens once in a while that one of the hoaxers will be sleeping at night and suddenly awakened with a very powerful thought, almost like a voice in the air around him. It's like an imperative thought in his own head saying, get up, call your friends, go out to such and such specific field in a known location, and go out into that field and make a crop circle. We will direct you. Now, this fellow for whom this is happening doesn't know who that voice belongs to or where it's coming from. And of course, it's in his mind. He's hearing it telepathically. But it's so imperative and directive that he will get up and he'll call his friends who occasionally make a crop circle with him. And they gather together in that particular field that was mentioned. And they'll be out in the field, and they're just starting to lay down the crop with their boards and planks or their garden rollers or whatever instruments they have. And they don't even know what the pattern is going to be.
Wow.
They're following an inner direction or words that seem to come into their mind, directions from somewhere else.
What a trip.
And so they just go ahead and they make the crop circle. And of course, it's very dark out there in the fields.
Yeah.
At night, there are no street lights around or house lights on or anything like that. So it's really just working in the darkness. And they don't know what pattern they've made, but then they will suddenly get the instruction telepathically that, okay, it's done. You can go home now, which they do. And then later on, a few hours later, they might go back to that field, to that location, and walk out into the field. And there is a nice new pattern that they made. So, and now they can see what the whole design is. And there are other things that some of these hoaxers report too, that I've heard it with my own ears. And that is that sometimes they will be out in the night, in the middle of a field, making a crop circle which they have planned to make. And suddenly they'll be aware that there's a very bright, glowing ball of light maybe coming toward one of them. And that's startling, of course. And they don't really know what would happen if that ball of light reaches them. It seems to be so bright and so radiant that often they're afraid that they might be burned if the ball of light actually came into contact with them. So they will just sometimes drop their equipment and run out of the field along one of the tractor tracks.
Wow.
And get out of that field as soon as possible because they don't know what they're dealing with. So that's been reported. And even one more thing that I think is quite fascinating, that sometimes these men will be out making, well, it did happen once at least, making a crop circle in the middle of the night and completely dark all around. And a little bit of night light, but no bright moonlight or anything. And so one of these fellows was laying down the crop, making a crop circle, and he was talking to someone looking like another man, several feet in front of him, and they were chatting away. And he assumed that that figure, that man, was one of his team of people making crop circles. But then eventually he looked around and he saw that all of his crop circle making teammates were behind him. So then who was this fellow who was in front of him?
Whoa.
And how did he get there? And so when he turned around then to look at the one who had been in front of him with whom he had been talking, that person was completely gone. And so, of course, he looked all around the field to see if that fellow was exiting the field via a tractor track or not, or was he at the edge of the field quickly somehow, but he just didn't see him anywhere. So there are these kind of mysterious, anomalous things that happen.
That is incredible. I mean, now, what is your insight as to why you think they're using, people on the ground floor versus maybe the UFOs or the beams or beams of light? Do you think that they're trying to show the difference between the two? Because I remember reading in your book how if it's a legitimate crop circle, the actual what do you call it? It's not a product. It's like I'm trying to think of what it's called. The piece of wheat or whatever. It's not broken. It's actually bent.
Oh, yes, and thank you so much for mentioning that. Yes, well, back to your question of why would this creative source, whatever it is, who makes the genuine crop circles, why would they sometimes use hoaxers? I'm so glad you asked that, because I think that this creative, original source of crop circles is sometimes using men, the hoaxer men, the men who like to do that anyway, not just any old man.
Interesting.
But a team of people who like to go out and make crop circles, and they know how to do it. And I must say, they can do a very neat, capable job. That's not true of all hoaxers, but many of them do.
Wow.
I think that it is that whatever is this original source, it's very intelligent, creative, as I have mentioned, that it realizes that there are various ways to lay down crop circles. One of the ways is the balls of light, one is the beams of light. Maybe somehow they are also pulling up the patterns from under the ground, as I mentioned. And another method of laying down crop circles is to enlist human men who have the ability to do that. Wow. And are willing to do that. That's one of the sources of getting crop circles here.
Wow.
On our Earth.
And I'll bet you dollars to donuts, Barbara, that it's especially at this time to increase the awakening and the awareness, because another thing, which, by the way, if anybody has not read this book that Barbara put out, it's called Crop Circles Revealed, Language of the Light Symbols. I have to tell you, this is one of the most fabulous books out there. It's something everyone should have. It's a phenomenal reference material, has beautiful pictures inside, and in each picture of a crop circle, she has the basic description of what it's implying and what it's describing and what it's saying to the world. And one of the things that blew my mind, Barbara, was when in your book it states that the crop circles you only have to see them in order to be able to receive the language of the crop circle, and it is automatically increasing your consciousness. Is that correct?
Oh yes, thank you. I think it is correct, and some people claim that the crop circles, when you look at them, even just looking at pictures of them, or particularly in being in one, that they actually are affecting our DNA. I mean, I can know for sure that they affect our consciousness. That's why I became so thrilled with crop circles when I first heard of them in 1990. And I just thought, wow, we're being communicated with from intelligences out there. And that absolutely thrilled me. And I dedicated myself to finding out about that and to going to England the next year, which was 1991, to check it out for myself. I mean, I don't know if you or your listeners have ever had this experience, but there have been a few moments in my life, and that was one of them when I first was aware of the tiniest hint about crop circles existing, that a big flash of light went off. It certainly felt like, from the middle of my body, just flaring out in all directions. And I was just at that time looking at the lecture schedule at a whole life expo and just determining which lecture I would like to go to next. And I came across this little tiny notice saying something like, mysterious patterns in the fields of Britain. And it had a little photo, just about like an inch square photo of a funny little pattern. But when I read mysterious patterns appearing in the fields of Britain, that's when I just had this big burst of light within me and thinking, wow, we're being communicated with some intelligence out there. Which I still think, by the way, 25 years later. Oh my goodness. So I went to that lecture, thought, oh, I've got to hear about this. It was so completely new to me. And halfway through that lecture, in which slides were shown and videotape, I found myself slapping my thigh and saying to myself, okay, that's it. I'm going next year. I've got to experience this. I've got to check this out. And so those two incidents were so powerful in me. And then I found out everything I could find out about in the next several months. And, and then did manage to go there in 1991. And there's several, I think there were about 8 or 9 crop circles that I could actually find,
nice.
Not having known that part of the country beforehand. And I was just hooked. I thought, okay, I'm coming back next year. I really want to learn as much about this as I can. It's anomalous. It's mysterious. It's a beautiful set of patterns. They're really pretty patterns. They're symbolic. And they're patterns that are very nice, but we don't quite recognize them in most cases. And there was an intrigue about that. I also felt, while being in some of those crop circles, even that first summer, I felt, and still do, feel a sense of presence. Like there's an unknown presence,
nice.
Aware of me and the other people in that crop circle. It feels like a very benevolent presence,
yes.
too.
And it's speaking to your soul, I mean, when you look at some of these crop circles, I just want to give people an example. And there's a plate 41. I don't know if this rings a bell to you, Barbara. There's a plate 41, which is one of my favorites, and the description of this beautiful crop circle, it says, to maintain planetary balance, there must be an intergalactic and parallel universal alignment of the frequencies. This crop circle is a tuning fork or a calibration device for the galactic shift that is occurring as we emerge through point zero. Point zero is a phase, not a day, that occurs as part of a birthing process. This crop has a stabilizing effect on Earth's energies during the phase of our emergence, and this is a vital pulsar point, a key gate to intergalactic interdimensional portals. The mathematical formula for this crop circle is seen on the top left corner of the star glyph, and it actually shows that. I mean, I'm telling you, anybody that is into crop circles, I've told Barbara this, and she's probably tired of hearing it. This is absolutely one of my most favorite books. Never. I mean, everybody on the planet should have this book. It's an awesome book.
Well, Alexandra, that's wonderful. What a great endorsement.
And it wasn't pre-screened, guys. I didn't say, hey, Barbara, I'm going to really plug the heck out of this book, but it really is worth, it's really worth having, because you can literally go into a meditation, Barbara, just by choosing a crop circle of the day and focusing on that sacred geometry and receiving that message, you know, within.
Yes, that's true, and thank you so much for raising that point. Any one of the crop circles in the book, or any other crop circle that might have happened since the publishing of the book, if you just sit quietly and gaze at the pattern and go into a state of meditation, it is reported to be extremely beneficial to you and adds to your consciousness in a very subtle way, but a very real way, I believe. It does add to your consciousness and your perspective on things. Now, it's interesting that some of these crop circles, if you're in them, have a certain kind of energy in them. In fact, I think each crop circle has a different kind of energy.
Interesting.
And it's subtle. Sometimes people feel it right away. Sometimes in order to determine that there's a change of energy in the crop circle from even just a foot or so outside of the crop circle. Some people use dowsing rods or pendulums or scientific instrumentation like electrostatic voltmeters or magnetometers, microwave detectors. There are various types of real scientific instrumentation that are used too. And some people just walk along the tractor track, which the British call tram lines. I think a nice sort of softer word.
Yeah.
And then they don't feel anything special, but usually it's beautiful scenery, and they love walking through the crop field. And then as soon as they get into just even one step into the crop circle, some people are just sensitive enough about energies that they can feel an immediate increase in energy.
Nice.
And from all these years' experience by myself and many, many other people, it seems like that energy is beneficial. In fact, there's an English crop circle researcher of real character and substance. Her name is Lucy Pringle, and since the very early 1990s, she has been doing a research study about how the crop circle energy, at least in some of these crop circles, has been known to heal people of physical problems, including herself. She discovered this. It was 1991 or 1992. She took a friend of hers into one of the crop circles, sort of introducing her friend to this phenomenon. And Lucy herself, who, by the way, lives in Hampshire County, England, so she's right there, fortunately, with the phenomenon. Anyway, she had a very bad condition in one shoulder. It was extremely painful, and she was even wondering if she could drive the 45 minutes or so needed to get to that crop circle. And it was hurting her all the way. Well, she and the friend went into that crop circle that they were visiting, and they sat there and they talked about it, and they just had a lovely time. They might have even had a picnic lunch in it, and they were there for 2 or 3 hours. And she noticed while she was driving home that her shoulder felt absolutely fine. And she thought, oh my goodness, I must have been healed of this really bad injury. I must have been healed in that crop circle. It must have been something about the special energies in that crop circle that healed my shoulder. So that made her inspired to do this research study. And she's still interviewing people and researching it, gathering data, gathering testimonies of other people who have been healed of a whole variety of conditions.
It's almost like when you... Yeah, it's almost like, Barbara, when you step into the crop circle, you're stepping into 0 point. And, everything's possible.
Well, that's a good point. That's a nice way to express that. Yeah, it is. There really is a difference. I go along the tractor track from wherever we parked along the road, the edge of a field, and we walk through the tractor tracks or tram lines to get out into the field, specifically into the crop circle, which we can usually see from the edge of the field. We can usually see pretty much where it is. And so I go along with my dowsing rods, and that's my particular method, in addition to just feeling it with my body. And usually, about 4 or 5, well, let's say about 10 or 12 feet before I arrive at the crop circle, still walking along the tractor track, I'm holding my dowsing rods up, and they are completely parallel, horizontal and parallel to each other. But as soon, literally, it's as impeccably so, as soon as I step into that crop circle, if it's not a man-made one, and most of them, in my opinion, are not man-made, then the dowsing rods respond to the unique energy in that crop circle.
Very cool.
And they open right up.
Wow.
I mean, in other words, they are registering a real change in energy from outside the crop circle compared to inside the crop circle.
So it's extremely powerful.
Yeah.
It sounds
and
like
not only that, but there are different areas within the crop circle that are either more energized or less energized. If the crop circle has a swirled circle in the middle of its pattern, that's usually where the strongest energy seems to be.
Wow.
And a little bit less so as you get closer to the edge of the crop circle, walking away toward the edge from the middle. And then there are just sort of hot spots, too. I mean, little areas here and there where the dowsing rods open even a little bit more, and areas where they open a little bit less. But everywhere in the crop circle, they are registering an increase in energy.
Wow, so it's a good place to go get healed. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, I'm just curious, have you determined if there's primary star systems that are doing this, or do you feel like it's from all over the place? Well,
there are different styles of crop circles, different styles of the patterns. So a good guess is, but we really don't know, a good guess is that maybe different beings from the different planets or different star systems are making crop circles. And that's why you'd see somewhat of a difference between the designs in these crop circles.
So you're saying you're saying the design is different, or you're saying that when you say the style, what do you mean by that?
The design.
The design itself. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And also, to some extent, the way that the crop is laid down, and that we call the lay, L-A-Y. The way that the crop is laid down on the ground. In some crop circles, you see a really, really smooth lay, just like a very shallow brook running over sandy water. And it has that sort of lovely natural ripple effect.
Nice.
On the sand.
Nice.
Under the brook. And it looks like that with some crop circles. Other crop circles might have the lay which is much more elaborate, like a braiding effect, that the crop seems to be laid down as you would braid hair.
Huh.
And some crop circles have an area very often in the center, but maybe other places too, where it looks like the wheat or whatever the crop is has been made into little sculptural shapes, like a ring looking almost like a beautifully made nest.
Ooh.
Or a weaving, or a basket, like a basket weave.
Wow.
So those areas will stick up from the ground, 6 inches or 9 inches or so. And so we call those the sculptures. I mean, and in very few crop circles I have visited over the years, the wheat has been sculpted during the making of the crop circle, sculpted to be like large tufts standing up as much as 3 or 4 feet.
Oh my God.
Like in one crop circle, there was a whole cluster in the center of that crop circle, and there were 6 of these sculptures made with the crop itself, and that whole crop circle had been made during the middle of the night, unseen. And, so sometimes it gets very elaborate. I think that the lay of the crop, the way that the crop is laid down, and itself forms patterns within the larger pattern or symbol of that crop circle. I think that lay is extremely important.
Wow.
And so for me, it's sort of a multi-dimensional experience, that there's the crop circle when viewed from above and photographed from above, like from an airplane, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 feet up in the air. And so that's the overview of the pattern. And then when you can see it from that dimension, and then when you go into it and you see the intricacies of the way the crop has been laid down in a smooth way, or maybe the sculptures or the braiding or the overlapping of one section of the crop over the other section, and then how that works in with the swirled circle. I mean, I just am breathless.
I was going to say, you must be in awe. I mean, it sounds, it's like the paintbrush of the heavens,
Yes.
Seriously. And
oh, yeah. And, just like some artists, for instance, Van Gogh, will have that very rough sort of laying down of the paint.
Like an etching almost.
Yeah, the thickness of the paint varies from area to area in the same painting.
Which gives it the dimension and gives it a different perspective. Definitely.
Yes, it does.
Well,
and then to compare that to paintings like with Ingres, I-N-G-R-E-S, one of the classical painters, everything is very smooth in terms of the painting. Well, that's the same thing, same kind of thing with crop circles, that sometimes the crops are more varied in terms of texture, and sometimes they're very, very smooth, and everything in between. So that actually visiting a crop circle is really an intriguing experience.
Well, you're motivating all of us, Barbara. I mean, you can hear the excitement in your voice. It's like, you're so passionate what you do. Can you share with us how the crop circles as of late have shifted and changed, and what are they representing to us now?
Well, first of all, I have to say that in the last couple of years, 2014, 2013, there were fewer crop circles in Wiltshire County, which has always been the heart of the whole phenomenon. I mean, there definitely were some, and they were very nice, but whereas in 1999, in that area alone of Wiltshire County, we had more than 150 crop circles happen that particular year, that summer, spring and summer.
Wow, that's a
1999.
lot.
And there were some amazing ones. But then we can compare that to 2013 and 2014, and there might have been maybe 60 instead of more than 150 in that general area. And particularly last summer, 2014, there were not so many in Wiltshire, but there were some really nice ones. And they seem to be spreading out more in different areas of England. What that meant to us visiting them is that we might have to drive from Wiltshire County maybe an hour and a half to get to one in another county, or maybe 2 hours to get to one that was further, where they were less concentrated, but more areas of England were having the pleasure of receiving them. And then, right now, I am busy developing a new PowerPoint presentation, which I'll be giving a couple of times this spring, and then I'm sure afterwards too. And that's about worldwide crop circles. And the reason I think it's important to do that as one of my many crop circle presentations is because the phenomenon is becoming so much more prolific in many, many countries. And I have a little private theory about that, which I enjoy.
Okay.
And again, it's a theory.
Cool.
We don't know if this is all indelibly true, but the theory is that as people in different parts of the world, or even just some people in different parts of the world, become interested in crop circles and, really curious and enthused about it, that subsequently another crop circle or more crop circles will appear in that part of the world. Now, an example of that is that in the late 1980s and particularly the 1990s, there were quite a number of researchers who very faithfully came over to England each summer to research the crop circles and experience them and enjoy them. And they went back, several of them went back and gave a number of lectures throughout the year, or each of those years, in Holland. And then, as more lectures were given, in other words, more people were becoming interested in crop circles, and more of the Dutch people were visiting England to experience their crop circles. In the meanwhile, while all that was happening, there were more and more crop circles appearing in Holland. And the same I could say of Germany, that even beginning in 1990 or so, there were at least a couple of researchers, Michael Hesseman and Andreas Müller, who came over to England and would stay for quite a period of time and research and measure and draw out the patterns of the crop circle. In other words, put a lot of attention into it, and then go back to Germany and give lectures and educate as many people as they could about crop circles. So as that was happening, more and more crop circles and really complicated, beautiful patterns of crop circles were being laid down in Germany. So and now we've got this, so this points to the idea, which I think is true, the idea that there is really an interaction, at least mentally, an interaction between human beings and these unknown makers of the crop circles, whom I really feel are conscious beings out there in various areas of space. We could call them extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, or, there are a number of ways to think about them. But, so I think that they are aware of where there is interest.
Well, it's almost like we're vibrationally pulling that in. We're drawing that into our field once we have that awareness, too.
Yeah.
And especially depending on their evolution and whether they can even communicate with, I call them off-worlders. If they have the ability to communicate with them, if they don't, this is one more perfect way to receive the physical validation.
Yes.
So that their friends and family members can say, hey, see, this really does exist.
Right. I know, and that's very exciting. People, I have found just, meeting new people around in public places, people who've not really gone to any particular place to research crop circles or extraterrestrials or anything. In other words, just regular, good people. When I talk to people like that, they seem to be so much more receptive to the idea about crop circles, even though there's a mysterious aspect to this.
That's good.
And they too wonder, gee, where could they be coming from? Who's doing this? What's this all about? But they're more interested to look into that and think that, there's something really mysterious here that I wonder about. Much more interested in doing that. That seems to be an easier entry point into some of the mysteries than is the entry point into people having encounters with extraterrestrial beings.
Right. It's not as scary, huh? And they're not as intimidated by it. But I'm curious, Barbara, what do you're saying that there's less of a propensity to have as many crop circles. What are you finding that they're trying to say to the world now? Like, what are the latest crop circles, in your opinion, representing to the people across the world?
Well, first of all, I just want to be sure to make this point that there is not such a big concentration of crop circles happening in England.
Okay.
Or they're, not in Wiltshire County. They're spread out more through many counties of England. And then even more remarkable than that is that there are more crop circles that are appearing in many more countries of the world. And not quite as intense a concentration of crop circles happening in England. So I think that we can at least speculate that whatever is this creative source making the crop circles, they're deliberately wanting more and more people worldwide to be aware of this phenomenon. One of the most simple, basic aspects of this whole phenomenon is that when people see pictures of these crop circle patterns, or even just hear about it, it gets most people to wonder, where did they come from? Maybe, okay, if humans aren't doing them, who is? And so it gets people to open up, at least in their questions, to the fact that there may be other intelligences in the universe. And that the crop circles seem to have the effect very often on people. I mean, I've seen it again and again and again when people are in a crop circle, that they are more likely now than I think people used to do decades ago. They're more likely to look up and wonder, is there something going on out there in the universe that is now showing itself to us? Like that initial immediate reaction I had when seeing that first little picture of a crop circle. Oh, we're being communicated with out there. Well, now, at that point, when that moment happened to me in 1990, I was not yet working in regression therapy with any people who were exploring their extraterrestrial encounters. So I didn't really know. I had heard of that happening to some people, but I didn't really know anything about it firsthand. And so, but still, I had that initial immediate take, oh, we're being communicated with from out there.
Right.
As if there's consciousness out there, consciousness beings of some sort out there.
So you're saying that they're using this more just to create an aware. It's not necessarily what they're trying to say. It's more of just getting the attention of the people that there's something outside of this reality that's trying to communicate with them.
Yes, well, I think that's very well said on your part, and that's the immediate thing, and also the continuing thing. Are there other intelligences out there that are trying to contact us in, by the way, a very benign way?
Yes.
A very non-threatening way.
Correct.
They just lay down these patterns in the fields. People don't see them do it, and they let people discover them and be interested or not. It's really a lovely way to let humanity know that, oh, there is other intelligence out there somewhere, and they're trying to communicate with us. So there's that very basic thing, plus the fact that when we look at some of the symbols, the patterns of individual crop circles, we see that there are some messages, and there are different groupings of messages that I have had the pleasure of giving lectures about sometimes. For instance, there are messages about astronomical things that are happening or will be happening on a specific date. A simple example of that is that occasionally there's a crop circle that seems to be foretelling of a solar eclipse.
Ah, true.
And that will be depicted in a crop circle. There was one in 1999, for instance, that happened in the springtime in a nice, young, very fresh crop. And it showed like a series of circles, with one circle overcoming another circle and filling up that circle. In other words, like the procession of the eclipse as it was happening. And that was predicting an eclipse that actually was to take place and did take place in August of that year.
Amazing.
So, and there are some crop circles that certainly seem to be depicting cycles of the sun, others depicting cycles of the moon, precession of the equinoxes, and the most spectacular one of all, I'm still thrilled about this, is that in 1994, if you will remember, the Shoemaker-Levy comet was actually, in fact, hurtling through the sky, heading toward Jupiter. And our astronomers knew that the Shoemaker-Levy comet would be colliding with Jupiter. So, and that happened in late July and early August, for real, out there in the skies. well, starting in May of that year, 1994, there was a long crop circle that happened on a hill in a very well-traveled part of Wiltshire, so lots of people would have the opportunity to see it. And it looked like, at first glance, it looked like a long insect, huge, I mean hundreds of feet long, just hurtling along that hillside, going in a particular direction. It even had sort of like a head on it. And
I'm looking at it right now. That's so funny.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Okay.
I actually said to myself, wow, this looks like, it almost looks like an ant, but it's got another piece of a body to it or something.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Well, it's in a green crop. I don't have my book in front of me at the moment. But anyway, it was what we call a harbinger, we could call it, of the event of the Shoemaker-Levy comet, which would be happening later in July and early August.
Interesting.
Okay, so then, in July, when Shoemaker-Levy comet out there in space was just about to hit planet Jupiter, there was another crop circle on another hill in the same area of Wiltshire, and it looked like it was flying along. It looked like a similar type of pattern in many ways, but it had sort of a head made of circles and rings, and it looked like it was flying across the hillside, heading somewhere, and it had 21 circles in its tail of the pattern. And then the next night, there was another crop circle that showed exactly the impact site of where the Shoemaker-Levy comet had actually collided with Jupiter. And that pattern, on a hillside also, different hillside, showed, it looked exactly like what was being shown in the newspapers from our astronomers of the actual site of impact on Jupiter. And then, you see, the Shoemaker-Levy comet had 21 pieces in that comet.
Wow.
Like a long string of 21 pieces. And that's why those two crop circles that happened before the actual impact had 21 circles in what looked like kind of a long tail. And so then, after that first impact, and this is just mind-blowing to me, that every time another piece of Shoemaker-Levy comet collided with Jupiter, another crop circle would appear in Wiltshire and sometimes Hampshire or Sussex counties that showed an impact. Well, it showed another head, as if this is the whole string of the comet, with one fewer circles in it.
Wow.
And that, I know, it's just mind-blowing. And then, so that continued. Every time another piece of Shoemaker-Levy comet hit Jupiter, a crop circle would appear in that part of England, showing one fewer piece in the tail, until it was all done in August. I think it was August 10th or 11th in 1994. And then you saw these circles of descending size next to each other, curving around in a circle, circles forming a circle, and then that was surrounded by a lovely, very even ring.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I think it was saying, okay, it's complete now.
Wow.
And that is in my crop circle book too, near the beginning of the color pictures.
I'm looking right
August
now.
10th or 11th 1994. There's a whole lovely section of color pictures, and that's definitely, I think, in page 1 or 2 or 3 of the color photos.
Okay.
So, oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, Barbara, that is spectacular. I mean, you just can't make, what I say to people all the time is you just can't make this stuff up.
No, at least I couldn't.
Yeah, for it to come out of our brains is what I'm trying to say. It's so divinely guided that you can't help but look at them and just your heart sings, because it's talking the language of light to you,
Yes.
And
yes, and there's so much consciousness.
Do you actually believe that do you believe that these are used as well to warn us about things like HARP?
Yes, I think that's a very good question on your part. I think so. There have been crop circles over the years that have shown a circle, which could be a planet, and then another circle in a trajectory coming toward that bigger planet. In other words, as if something is coming and is going to collide possibly with that planet.
Wow.
And there are specific messages sometimes that we can see in these crop circles. Like last summer, 2014, there was a crop circle that looked like, it was a series of a big spiral actually. And then here and there in that spiral, there was almost a square laid down along the curves of the spiral. And somebody, fortunately, recognized that pattern was a Morse code pattern.
Wow.
And the Morse code was saying, no more war.
Right on.
Yeah. So, boy, did we cheer when
yeah, right on.
Translation of it.
I just got goosebumps on that one.
Oh, yeah. One of the most spectacular things, that I'm just still agog over, in 2001, there was a crop circle that appeared in Hampshire County, and instead of it being a circular form, it was a rectangular shape. It looked rather like a picture frame, and that you'd have a portrait, a photo of a person in. Now, this is a laid-down crop, and the picture of the face in the middle is looking, because since this is laid down on the ground, it looks like this face is just facing right up into the sky. It's a lovely face.
Wow.
It seems to be a female face. That's certainly the impression that most of us have. And we don't know if we were being given the message that we are aware of you humans, and here's a picture of one of you, or if this intelligence is saying, this is what we look like. We are not that different from you.
Interesting. I just got the hit, Barbara, that it had to do with divine feminine.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that that's what came through right away was the ushering in and the perpetuation and acceleration of the divine feminine on the planet.
Wow, that's really nice. I like that.
I don't know if that's the case, but...
Well, we don't know, but that's a wonderful interpretation, Alexandra. And that's one of the wonderful things about the crop circles is that so many people with different backgrounds and different fields of learning get interested in the crop circles, and they contribute their thoughts like you just did. Now, I hadn't particularly thought that thought, but I'm very happy to receive that and consider that may be one of the meanings. I think that these crop circles, it's very possible to have quite a number of meanings. Like an astronomer would look at that in one particular way.
Yes.
A mathematician would look at it in another way.
Yes.
A scientist of a different type would look at it in a different way.
Very good point.
A metaphysician would look at it. A spiritually oriented person would look at it in a different way. So with any of these crop circles, we get feedback from all these different disciplines about what the meaning could be. And maybe it's all of the above.
Yeah. It's like multilingual, huh?
Yes, and multilingual and multi-meaning.
Yes.
And there are many crop circles, and we, at least the people that I know and get to talk to, we were thinking, I wonder what that could possibly mean. And then we may get feedback from somebody in one of these fields of interest, and say, oh yeah, maybe that's what this one could be depicting. And then we'll hear feedback from somebody from another discipline of learning. Oh, I see. Oh, I didn't even notice the extraordinary geometries in that. And that's another point too, that these crop circles really have noticeable geometries in them.
Very much.
And some of them are so sophisticated, like fractal geometries, and many different kinds of equilateral triangles, and the squaring of the circle and the circling of the square. Now, these have great meaning for people who are astute in geometry. And the golden mean proportion is shown in some of the crop circles. And that means a lot to people who study that and appreciate that the golden mean proportion is shown throughout nature. And the fractals, the way that ferns particularly grow, and then the nautilus shell, fractals are shown throughout nature as well.
Yes.
And when you begin to see that one little symbol relates to so much in our natural world and in our understanding of things, it's quite remarkable. So the symbols alone is a very, very interesting aspect of the crop circle phenomenon. And some of the circles, or some of the symbols, really have easily recognizable meaning to us. For instance, over the years there have been several depictions in crop circles that are done quite differently from each other, but still are showing the symbol of the Christian cross. And another symbol in 1999 was showing the Kabbalah tree of life.
Yes.
And another symbol in that year, 1999, was showing the Jewish menorah, even with the little oil lamp. I mean, a beautiful crop circle. I think that one is in the color pictures of my book, Crop Circles Revealed, as well. I think the Kabbalah one in a yellow crop, or a seed canola crop, is in that, is pictured in that too. And then the five-pointed star of David.
Yes.
And that comes up quite a bit.
That's one of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, very, very nice. And geometers love to play with these patterns that they see photos of over the years and come up with the exquisite proportions and measurements and relationship of one part to the other of these designs. I mean, there's one wonderful man in England named Michael Glickman, and he had his career for many years as an architect. He was also a very keen geometer, And so he gets all that. He lives right there in crop circle territory in England. And for the fall and winter and spring, between each crop circle year, he is working intellectually on these patterns that have come down the previous summer, looking at the geometric intricacies and excellencies of these patterns.
Wow.
And saying, that this is so masterful to be giving us these geometric patterns which have so much meaning.
Yes.
And they're given from, as far as we can see, this unknown source, this intelligence that is out there.
Wow.
So I mentioned the rectangular picture with the face looking up. That really got our attention because we had never seen anything like that before. And many people said, oh, that looks like the face on Mars, which is another anomaly that many of us have been interested in.
Yes.
And then about 10 days later, in the same field, an even more remarkable crop circle appeared. That was a longer triangular-shaped form of a pattern, and it had many different features in it that seemed to be a response to what we human beings sent out from the Arecibo, Puerto Rico, huge radio telescope. I think that's the largest radio telescope in the whole world. And in 1974, the SETI program sent out a message in binary code from Arecibo, and it went out to the M13 star cluster, or at least it was aimed at that star cluster, and that was a message in binary code about us human beings. And so it had designs at the top of the pattern that we set out, and it was showing our chemical constituency as human beings and our mineral components, certain aspects of our DNA, the basic double helix DNA pattern, and it showed symbols of where we are in relation to our sun in our solar system. It showed in binary code the population of the Earth at that time, 1974, and it showed a basic shape, a depiction like a silhouette of human beings with a relatively small head and a relatively larger body. And so it showed all kinds of things. It even showed our transmission system from this radio telescope that we were sending this whole message out. Okay, that was, quite a feat that we did, a noticeable thing. In 1974, Alfred Drake, or Frank Drake, I think, was the originator of doing this. He was in charge of the project of sending this message out into space. And then, in 2001, this message came back as a crop circle in the field nearby where that face crop circle was, and it seemed to be a total response from space to the message we had sent out. So it told about their chemical components, their mineral components, their population, their DNA, which had another strand to it. We showed 2 DNA strands for ours. They had 3. And then when it came to the depiction of what they are like, instead of having the small head and the bigger body, it showed a bigger head and a smaller body. And it showed their relation of their planet to the sun, to their sun, could very well be a different sun. And they were further away from their sun rather than the third rock out from the sun, which we are. And they showed their transmission, so they showed their population, which was smaller than ours, and they showed their transmission system, and what that pattern looked like was exactly like a pattern that had appeared in the same field in Hampshire County the previous year, 2000.
Amazing.
So they already in 2000 showed us a pattern of their transmission system, and here they were reiterating it in this larger pattern in 2001.
Amazing.
So there was really a communication going on between them, whoever they are, and us. I think it's, really quite remarkable. And then the next year, 2002, there was a pattern in a different field, but in that general area of Hampshire County, England, and it was showing, the classical depiction of the gray alien head.
That's the one I was going to ask you about. I was hoping you'd get on to that.
I mean, that was so striking. It's just incredible. And in 2002, and it looks like the alien head, which is a crop circle, is looking right at you.
Yes.
Like when we take a photograph and the person being photographed looks right at the lens of the camera, so that when you see the photo later, it looks like the photo is looking at you.
Yes.
That's the way the face crop circle is.
Like Mona Lisa, huh?
Yeah, just looking right at you, even looking through you.
Yes.
Sort of. It has that sense. So, anyway, that alien head, you can see a little neck, and you can see fingers holding up a circular disc, looking like a CD disc or a DVD. And that disc has a binary code on it. And that binary code has been deciphered or interpreted. It's been read. And the message is very powerful. It's like a warning to human beings, warning us to beware of lies and deceit, false promises, beware of all these untruths being told to us. And they said that there is not much time left. In other words, we've got to really pay attention.
Yes.
And conduit closing, I think that meant the conduit between them, the makers of this crop circle, and us humans. And it also says, but there is still time. In other words, I think it's basically saying, human beings, wake up.
Right.
There are those who are leading you into a really destructive path.
Yes.
And, beware. Oh, it even uses the word beware. And, you've got to wake up. You've got to stop this. Or, it doesn't specify, but, or you will not be there anymore.
Well, yeah, and also get off your knees. Stop giving your authority and power to a group of beings that are A, not human, and B, are not here for our benevolent outcome. Right.
Yes. Well, and I think, everybody could interpret this in their own way, and they probably do. I think it's warning us about, what's happening on Earth by fellow human beings.
True, that too.
Yeah. We could look at all the chemtrails, the nuclear proliferation, the destruction, the global climate change, all the fossil fuels we're burning and using, and but especially it seems, as I interpret it, I've thought about it so much, that our leaders are, and some of our leaders in this earth, are leading us down a great path of deceit,
Mm-hmm.
Which is really leading toward, or could be leading toward, great destruction.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's basically saying, wake up and don't just believe everything you hear, and think for yourself. Be aware of what's going on.
Well, and you know what, too, Barbara? It's like we have spent, well, let's say the government has spent such an exhaustive amount of energy to try to create fear around this topic, where if people would just step back and just look at that alone, okay, why would a government need to spend so much effort to create fear? And that's because that's our support team. Those are our friendlies. Those are the beings of light that are our family, that are here to support us. You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to this. There's so many different angles at which we can look at all this. So many different interpretations.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that one up, because that, without a doubt, I think everybody around the world remembers that one. You know, the alien with the big head and kind of the smaller pointed chin, and I mean that one was just unbelievable. Is there anything that's like, really standing out for you right now that's come out in the last couple of months?
Well, there are no crop circles happening now.
Wow.
Because crop circles happen only, which makes sense, during the growing season of the crop. So right now we're in early March, and that means that the fields in England and elsewhere are being planted.
Yes, you're
the
right.
The seeds are beginning to take hold, and by April, there will be some crops certainly showing above the surface of the ground, and they may grow, depending on the crop and the area and the climate. They might grow to be a foot or so high, maybe a little bit more or less, depending on the weather in the particular area. Weather is very, very important in relation to crop circles. And then by May, usually there are enough crop fields where the crop is tall enough, in other words, 2.5 feet or 3 feet, maybe at the most, high. And then there's enough growth in the crop so that a crop circle could be laid down. We usually do begin to have reports of crop circles in England anyway.
Right.
And that would be true pretty much in the U.S. In May. And occasionally there's been one in England. I know one year, I think it was 1999, there was one on my birthday. Beautiful crop circle. And that's April 3rd. So that's the earliest one that I've ever been aware of.
Very good.
In the season. And then more crop circles continue to happen during the month of June. Again, I'm speaking of England and the climate that is similar enough. In other words, Europe would be included in that, and Scandinavia. And then in certain parts of the U.S. as well. And then many more happen usually during the month of July and August. And then by usually about the middle of August, the harvesting has all taken place. So that means that the crop circles are still laid down along the ground, right down there at ground level, but the contrasting standing crops around the laid down crop circle have been cut down like a butch haircut. That's the harvesting. So you can actually go out in a field and see where the upright stubble, shall we say, of the most of the field, where the crop was still growing and harvested, and that still is forming a contrast between the laid down blades of the crop in the crop circle. So you can still see it, but it's not nearly as noticeable because you don't have the contrast
Right.
of the taller standing crop. And then, oh, so amazing that the maize crop, we call it corn, they tend to call it maize, the corn crops continue growing in September. They can even go right toward the end of September before they're harvested. And those corn crops in England grow at least 12 feet
Wow.
high.
Wow.
And they have thick stalks. And the thick stalks, and of course lots of leaves, and the corn cobs too. The thick stalks are really quite brittle. But this amazing phenomenon is able to bend over without breaking those thick, brittle stalks and swirl them and swoop them into really remarkable, beautiful crop circles. That to me is the most amazing
That's
part
incredible.
of all.
What?
Yeah, so most years there were some of those, at least one or two crop circles that happen in the corn crop.
That's
in
amazing.
England.
What is the most popular? What's the most popular crop that they use? Is it just always wheat, or?
Well, wheat is definitely the most popular crop.
Okay.
Popular from the part of the general circle makers, genuine supermen.
How did the farmers react?
I'll just finish on the crops. Wheat is used the most, and barley. Quite a lot of crop circles happen in barley, and oilseed canola, which they call in England they call it rapeseed, and then sometimes oats, and even in some parts of the world, like the U.S., in the Midwest of the U.S., they have crop circles appear in things like soy plants and other short crops that have lots of leaves, not necessarily the cereal grain crops. Although in Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, there are sufficient wheat fields, and we do see crop circles there, and occasionally, not nearly as many as in England, and in those Canadian states that border the upper reaches of the United States, there have been crop circles in their wheat fields that have happened over the years.
Interesting.
So the wheat really is very, very frequently used.
So, Barbara, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just don't want to forget this question. I've always wondered this. How do the farmers react? I mean, do they get, you hear some reports, but you always wonder, like, what really went on behind closed doors. Are they angry about this, or are they contacted by the beings of light beforehand, or how do they react when, a portion of their crop is, manipulated into the crop circle itself?
Yes, well, reactions differ among farmers, but I can speak only about the ones in England, that I think that farmers used to be more sort of neutral about it through the 1980s and 1990s, and very rarely did a farmer go right out with a machine and cut down the crop circle or cut down the standing crop right around it. But in the 2000s and in the last very few years, so many of the farmers, at least in Wiltshire County, England, have just gotten fed up with losing the income from the laid down crop circle, because harvesting machines don't pick up the laid down crop. In other words, they just don't get to sell that, any of the wheat that's been laid down in a crop circle. And so they've been fed up with that, and some of them have just become fed up with people all summer long coming onto their property to visit the crop circle. So by last year, 2014, they had made an agreement. A lot of the farmers had made an agreement, at least the ones in Wiltshire County, and they had their farmer meetings, and they decide certain policies and so forth, as any field of work would do, and many of them made an agreement. I don't know if they signed a paper or just agreed verbally, but that as soon as a crop circle would appear on their land, they would go out and chop it down, and so that people wouldn't come onto their property to visit it. So that did happen quite a bit in 2014,
wow,
which was very disappointing to us. But some of the farmers did not do that and left them perfectly intact. So we did have quite a number of crop circles, and wonderful ones to visit, to go into and spend time with, and that was wonderful. I'd like to remember to say at this point that I do every summer lead a tour of crop circles in Wiltshire County.
Ooh.
And I've been doing that for about 12 years. It's been wonderful,
wow,
a great pleasurable adventure, and people so much appreciate that they don't have to worry about where to find crop circles, and because they're not listed in the newspaper or anything like that. You kind of have to have your special sources,
yes,
which I've built up over the years for sure, and they don't have to worry about how to get to them or where to park or where to find them or how to behave in them. So I take these groups of people each summer, and we explore the crop circles and just have a great adventure.
Oh my gosh!
So this summer, 2015, may very well, quite likely, be the last summer that I will be leading crop circle tours. There's just a variety of reasons for that. But I am leading one this year, 2015, from August 3rd, that's a Monday, to the next Monday, August 10th. And if anybody would be interested in that crop circle tour, I still have a few places left. I take a maximum of 16 people because I don't want to take a huge throng of people into any one crop circle. And also I can, I do arrange accommodation where we can all stay in the same place, which is very nice. There are no big hotels in the crop circle area. So, but we have a wonderful place that I always book a year in advance to stay in. And so if anybody would be interested in the crop circle tour, they could go to my website, which you've already mentioned, www.barbaramft.com, or they could email me at Barbara _line Lamb, Lamb, at Verizon.net. So I'm still accepting people on the tour. We have wonderful people already signed up for it. And it's just one of those unique adventures, for some people, once in a lifetime adventure. For some people, they keep coming back for a second or third year because they enjoy it so much. So it's nice for people to know that it would be possible for them to have these crop circle experiences with like-minded people. It's wonderful. I love it.
Sounds fabulous. I would love to go. I mean, I'm going to seriously check it out. And what rings true to me is you mentioned before that you've seen up to 1,300 crop circles. You must be one of the more you've seen so many. You're so well versed in this field. I mean, are there any others that have seen as many as you?
Yeah, there probably are. There are a couple of people from Holland who have, I think they started as early as I did, and they're
Wow.
very faithful visitors and researchers of Crop Circle. There is a young man in Germany. I know he hasn't gone there every year, but most of Andreas Müller. And I have a couple of American friends. One American friend who's been able to go over from Southern California most of the years. She's had to skip 2 or 3, but as far as non-English people are concerned, that's probably accurate. That
Wow.
I'm one of the very, very few who, I may be the only one, for all I know, who goes every summer.
This is quite the opportunity, huh, Barbara? And in fact, I was going to ask you, has it ever been reported how long ago these crop circles started?
Well, yes, there's a scattering of reporting. There's an accounting in a little local newspaper in 1678 of a mysterious circle appearing in the field of a farmer. And back then, in 1678, they considered it must have been work of the devil. And they named the crop circle the Mowing Devil. And we actually have a woodcut of that, this basic local newspaper of that area. But it's wonderful that that article has lasted all these years. And there is the occasional report of a crop circle or two happening in England in the 1800s, and then in the earlier 1900s, and so on, up till this time. So it wasn't really, however, known publicly as a phenomenon called the crop circle phenomenon until well into the 1980s. And there were quite a few crop circles happening, and they were becoming gradually more and more elaborate. And then until 1990, there were these long, what we call pictograms, these very long patterns. They might be a few hundred feet long with different circles and rings and straight lines and different features, and that's when it really became more complex. And ever since then, 1990, we had a huge variety of shapes and patterns and symbols and messages from many different fields of interest, as I mentioned. And so it's really a lot, and it keeps on happening. I hope it always will. And that's one of the precious things about it, too, is that there's no guarantee as each spring and summer comes along. There's absolutely no guarantee that crop circles will continue to appear. Those of us involved in this always hope that they will appear, and so far, since we've been interested, they have. So right now, I'm not waiting for any crop circles to appear in the month of March, but maybe 1 or 2 in April, and maybe a few more in May, and more in June, and more in July and August, and even with the corn crop into September. And then it's all over because the harvesting happens and the fields get all mulched and turned under, and and then in the winter the planting for the new season happens.
That's amazing. This is truly your calling, Barbara. What a gift. What a gift to humanity you are. Seriously.
Thank you. I consider it a gift to humanity that they are appearing. I mean, I really do, seriously. I think this is remarkable that this lovely intelligence from out there somewhere is giving us these gifts.
Yes.
And it's such a pleasure to be one of the people who receives these gifts.
Well, and you were you were early on the scene, and your insights are, you have so much experience in the insight of what these are, trying to communicate to us. And we need that.
Yes.
The world needs that, because there's that block, which is what the huge yearning within so many people that are awakening, their huge yearning of, I just want to connect. And this is one of the ways in which to do so. So I commend you. I mean, I
think there is.
So important.
Yeah.
Wow. So your tour is on August 3rd, right?
Yeah, Monday, August 3rd. That means that people from the U.S. would be flying to England on Sunday, August 2nd. There's a time difference here. They're ahead of us in time. So in order to arrive on Monday, August 3rd, people from the U.S. would be flying over sometime on Sunday, August 2nd.
God, that would be such a blast.
When we come back again, we come back because the time difference changes on the way back, that we arrive back on the same day when we leave.
Yeah.
Even though it's just as far.
Well,
like England is 8 hours ahead of California, for instance.
Yes. Well, I'm a little bummed because I really want to cover your new book, and we don't have enough time because we only have about 5 more minutes, but I would love it, if you want to come back on the air and review your new book. I think it's very, very, it's so assisting to those out there, because I have a lot of people in my audience who are experiencers, who have been abducted and have gone through a plethora of challenges because of that experience. And Barbara has written a new book called Alien Experiences, where she reviews a lot of case studies, but she also, with the help of her friend Nadine, of course, has provided such a wonderful checklist. I thought that alone was worth this book.
Yes, that is important. And also, there's a section on help for the experiencers of extraterrestrial contact.
Yes.
I've included 25 cases of these extraterrestrial encounters that come, all of it comes through my regression therapy work that I do with people. And that, along with the crop circles, has been a remarkable number of regressions that I've done, at least 2,300 individual regressions.
That's amazing.
For about 1,300 people. Some of them I've done multiple regressions for because they've lived close enough to me. And so there's a great body of material about these extraterrestrial encounters. And I've chosen, in the 25, different types of experiences that happen that seem to be for different purposes. There's such a wide spread.
There really is.
Of encounters happening and beings doing the encounters.
I have so many questions for you regarding this book. So if you're willing to come back to review that, I would love to go over it with you, because I really do feel this is such a hot topic out there for so many people just wanting to understand the the experiences of being abducted. Before we tie things up, can you answer this? It just seems to me that so many more of us have been abducted than we realize. Do you agree with that?
Oh yes. People are sort of waking up bit by bit to the fact that some of the peculiar, mysterious things that happened to them earlier in life, even beginning very early childhood, that they're beginning to realize, maybe that's what that was. It comes forth all the time. For instance, somebody might look back and say, when I was in kindergarten, I remember that day I was playing out in the backyard, and suddenly there was all this super bright light, even though it was daytime, and all this weird feeling, all this energy kind of feeling, and I didn't know what it was. And then when I finally went back into the house, it was dark. It was 2 hours later, and my mother was angry because she didn't know where I'd been all that time.
Right.
And I didn't know either. And then they finally, as they hear more about it in the public, the airwaves and so forth, they think, oh, I wonder if I could have been picked up by extraterrestrials. And then they'll look into it and come for a regression or go to somebody for a regression. And then they realize that, oh my gosh, not only did I have that experience with extraterrestrials, but I've had lots of others as well.
Yes.
And the more that they do regressions, if they're able to do more than one, a whole big picture begins to appear that they've had all this sort of previously unknown set of things happening.
Yes.
And they may be still having experiences that they haven't been able to explain.
And I think this is the core issue for many, many people right now. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are running out of time. But this is really important, folks. Barbara has definitely put together not only some tools and effective ways in which to do regression therapy, but she has so much good information for those of you that are searching for answers regarding the abduction experiences that you've had. So we'll definitely set up another interview with Barbara to provide that information. And in the meantime, please visit her website at barbaralambmft.com and check out her tour, because I really don't know very many people out there that are as knowledgeable in the crop circle field as Barbara. She's really done her research and her homework, and she has such phenomenal insights. I just think you're a lovely person, Barbara, and I really thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Alexandra, and I applaud you for sharing this information with your audiences. I think that's just great.
Well, it's important.
And more people are hungry for this.
Yes, they are. And thank you for providing it. So just wanted to wish everybody a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. You know how much I love you all. Please continue to check out galacticconnection.com on the daily blog page and all the cool things that are going on with us, including the implant removal series. And we will catch you next Tuesday. Same time, same channel, station 2, and you guys take care. Thanks so much.